Uh, Tim asks, how might you use data to identify a niche proposition that appeals to your target markets?
That is a mouthful. Depends on the data, right? So that's a bit ambiguous term. If you mean to find it or to generate your value proposition. So for in your case, Tim, I would say in machining in general, like the first thing you got to get across is, do you have a cert, right? ISO, ASTS, whatever it is. Do you have a cert? Then what types of products or industries are you going after to then determine how are you guys better? Like you work a lot in aerospace, med device, industrial, electrical components, etc. But what makes you different? What is your niche? Are you a general machine shop? Work with anybody? Anybody who's got stuff to turn and burn, you'll do. Or are you focused in a niche?
And then we have a question from Diamond, and they ask, hey Kyle, we specialize in selling drilling equipment. How can we encourage customers to choose our products over those offered by OEMs?
I'm assuming for oil and gas, you think? Drilling equipment, probably oil and gas. So how do they pick it? Yours over OEM. So when you're going to, if you're a smaller company, you're going against OEMs, a lot of times lead time and availability and pricing could be the main three. So you might be able to pull on the lever of like, you can't go after longevity. You can't really do service unless there's a known issue in the OEM industry of drilling components or drilling equipment where their service is just horrible. If that's a known issue, then use that as the value proposition. But you really got to have conversations. So talking to people and being like, what are three issues that you're having with this specific product, your drilling equipment, your drilling products that you guys are currently purchasing? Are you having any issues with it? Because sometimes they may be like, nope, we're good. Okay, can I ask who you're currently buying it from? So you're doing a little bit of market research. So that's where the salespeople that are having conversations usually can provide marketing and other salespeople insights into what should you really be focusing on with your questions, because they're having the actual conversations to know what levers are they pulling to then get engagement. So it could be delivery and lead time. If you're selling equipment, how are you servicing that equipment? That could be a value prop. But if the bigger OEMs are like, no, dude, I've got 8,000 trucks out there throughout the United States or throughout the South area along the Gulf. I got 8,000 trucks that are going to service all the equipment. Well, you can't compete with that if you're a smaller company. But maybe the technology behind it, go after efficiency, to where your equipment may not last longer, but it's more efficient. You're going to burn through less bits, burn through less tools, less preventive maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. So it depends on what the market is telling you the issue is, which I'm assuming that there's got to be a problem. Otherwise, you wouldn't be working for a company that created a solution to that problem. But too often, people just go into talking about their proposition and their value prop before even asking any questions. I don't want to tell you my value prop until I know what problems you have, because then guess what? My value prop is going to be directly related to those issues. So if you ask somebody a question like, yeah, what's the biggest issue you're having with this equipment? Servicing the equipment. Like obviously this stuff is going to break, right? It doesn't last forever, but servicing it is an issue where we're waiting weeks for spare components. We're waiting weeks for a tech to come out, et cetera, et cetera. Then that at that point you could then go into, yeah, so we have a policy, we have this in place to help customers with that. From a service standpoint, we do X, Y, and Z. So you're using your value proposition in conjunction with the problem that they're having to offer them up a solution. So they kind of all three go hand in hand.
And then Tim has another question.
Let's hear it, Terry.
If I wanted to add a service, machining or otherwise, how do you decide what to add?
That's a general question, Tim. How do I decide what to add? So first, identify a market. So somebody's already doing what you're thinking about, right? So figure out who that is, and maybe somebody locally to you in the greater Janesville area, greater Chicagoland area. So if you're like, hey, I do, for instance, you do machining, and now you want to talk about anodizing, annealing, heat treating, etc. So you've got like a secondary type of service that you offer. What I think what you're trying to ask is, how do you pick what that service should be, and how do you figure out the value prop behind it? So first step is figure out the TAM, which stands for total available market. How many people have a need for this? If you're like, I'm not going to do market research or pay somebody $20,000 to do that, cool. Don't even worry about it. How many companies do you know that do it? And how many customers they have that are doing it? So if there's somebody that only does it, there's obviously a need, right? You don't have to get the total available market like the specific number. Like in the United States, there's $6.3 billion spent on this total available market. But you can just look at companies that are doing it, and if it's common and if it makes sense, and from your standpoint, it is a value added proposition and not completely new thing, right? You're doing CNC machining, turning, milling, maybe you're doing like EDM work, stuff like that. And then you want to say like, oh, now I want to start selling lumber. Obviously, that's not a good vertical for you to be in. But if it's a value added proposition, and instead of you sending it out to have somebody else do it for you, or you're able to take business from other people in the area that offer that up as a service that then could lead into your main thing, that's a good situation to be in, and I would go after it. But it has to be something that's relative to where ideally you can take your existing customers and offer that up to where it's an instant revenue generator for you. Like, hey, I told you before we didn't do this, but now we do. So I don't have to outsource that anymore. Or, hey, I know that you probably have products that do this, like let's just say heat treating. I know you probably have companies that do this for you. I don't know if you do, but if you do, we now offer it up as a service. We already make parts for you. Now we also could do this thing for you. So again, it all goes back to having conversations. Do your current customers have a need that you're currently not servicing? Step one. Step two, if you don't want to go that route and you're like, my customers don't have a need, what are other things that are value added props, value added services to your existing supply chain that you know you could do because competitors do it? And if they're doing it, there's a reason why they're doing it, because there is a market to do it for. So I hope that makes sense. Look at like what you're making, what are other things you can do with that, what's another service, tool, equipment, etc., that could be a revenue generator for you based on either current customers that already use it, that you could be like, hey, if I do that too, would you guys give me some business? Yeah, we would, Tim. We love you guys. Then it's like, cool, I'm going to buy the equipment. I can now justify the purchase. But before you do that, you don't want to rely just on your current customers. Are there people that already offer that service? If they do, then it's a likelihood that you could go into it and crush it.
All right. And then we have a question from Reading Dave. He asks, is there any data for markets on what services and products are being discontinued?
Reading Dave. I'd like to know what Video Dave looks like, or Talking Dave, right? Wouldn't that be funny if we had somebody that was like, I'm Talking Dave. What's up with Reading Dave? I mean, I'm sure that there are, like, the market research area of the world is like massive. But if you're talking about a product, like if you sell a specific product that is, like for instance, like this thing sold by ABC company is going to be discontinued, and you want to sell something that while that's being discontinued, your product can replace it, and there's a market there. I'm assuming that's what you mean. And if that is what you mean, I mean, I don't know of any specific, I only talk about things I know about. I don't know of any specific sources or sites where it's like, hey, all these things are going to be discontinued if you sell aftermarket parts or aftermarket stuff to do that, then you should sell those things or make those things. I don't know if there's something out there like that. I feel like if you're in a specific niche or vertical and you're paying attention to the landscape of, if you sell aftermarket parts that replace OEM parts, then you should have fingers to the pulse of no big ticket items that are going to be becoming obsolete. But other than that, I don't know of any specific location. I would just Google it. And since you're reading Dave, I'm sure you're reading a lot. So just Google it, man.
And Reading Dave did say, once I put out videos, I'll call myself Video Dave.
Let's go. Video Dave. Video Dave is Reading Dave's alter ego. I love that.
And then we have a question from A. Fernandez Castro. He asks, hi, Kyle. How can I improve my technical knowledge without being a technician?
Learn from those that have the knowledge. Read, watch videos. That's pretty much it. Also understand that you want to have enough technical knowledge to be dangerous to answer questions. You do not want to have all of the answers. If you have all the answers, then you're going to be spending time way too much on the technical side than on the selling side if you're in sales. But you should have a team to rely on. So part of it comes with experience. I got into the plastics industry when I was 26, knew nothing about plastics whatsoever. I had a strong technical aptitude. I could learn anything quickly because I think mechanically like that. And it's interesting to me. So I could learn things quickly, but I knew nothing about plastics. So I had to learn while doing it. It was like I was building the ship while I was trying to sail it. I'm trying to soak up knowledge internally from all the people that went to school for that know that stuff, owners, upper management, etc. And then also just by nature of going into conversations, selling to people, working on projects, I just learned things as I went along and just stacked up that information. So if you have resources internally to learn from, ask them those questions, retain that information. As something comes up from a sales process standpoint, you talk to them, and the potential client asks a question, you have to go get the answer. That should only happen once, right? If it's the same type of question, you should only have to go and get that answer once, because the next time somebody asks that question, you already have the answer from the last time that you asked for the right person to give you that answer.
And we have a question from Adam Schmidt, and he asked, how do you keep your mouth shut as an extrovert in a sales call?
That's a tough one. That's something that's like a personal battle that you'll have to deal with, right? Like you want to be leading and steering the conversation. How to keep your mouth shut? Know that them talking more means that you're going to sell more. So you talking less means that you're going to convert more. You're going to find out more information. So use your extrovertness and ask those questions. Bring the energy. Bring the personality behind it. Ask those questions, and then ask more questions and follow up, and then wait for your time to provide them with a solution. So yeah, I totally get it, the issue that you might be dealing with, but I would say just be patient. Awkward silences are okay, and I always have to tell people that. Like, you don't have to fill awkward silence. Like, if you ask a question, wait for the answer. Count to like 10. If nobody answers at that point, it's like, hey, are we still in this conversation together? But instead of filling that, you ask a question, then you offer up solutions to it. So that happens a lot. Where, what would you say the top 3 things you're dealing with in this area? Would it be this, this, this? And you're offering up those potential answers to your question? No. The question is simple. What are the top 3 things that you're dealing with on a daily basis? And then wait. And then as they respond back, ask additional questions. So it's really something you're going to have to fight with yourself, but listening pays more than talking.
All right. And then Diamond followed up, and they say, our niche is foundation drilling equipment, and customers buy OEMs for their perceived superior quality. With price being a lesser concern, what strategies would you recommend to convince them?
So if they're buying OEMs based on perceived quality, but I'm sure you know, as most people know, a lot of times those OEMs don't have the better quality, and you as a small guy don't want to go into the situation and say, oh, you're buying the ABC company, their stuff sucks, by the way, like we've got data to support it. So number one, you can come with case studies and say, hey, we've tested our equipment versus the top 3 OEMs, not listing names, and these are the results that we saw. And if price is not a concern, because probably they're more expensive than you, I would have to pull on a different lever of the case studies support your quality claims, right? You saying that your stuff is better than their stuff. Every salesperson is going to say that they're better than everybody else. That's just the nature of the beast. So unless you come with raw data, a case study, we did these tests, here's the data to support these claims that we have, at least at a high level, again, not mentioning those specific OEMs, but we compared against the top 3 OEMs, some of which that I'm sure you currently buy from, and here's the results that we had. That's much more convincing than you being like, oh yeah, we have a product similar to ABC companies. Ours is better though. Like, you have to think about it like that. It doesn't matter how much of a fancy bow you put around the bullshit that you're going to say to somebody, they're still going to think that it's bullshit, unless you put a fancy bow around a case study, a white paper, something like that that says, here's the data to support it. And then from there, I would go into what is something else that's important to them, lead time or service or what. If price isn't an issue and it's just perceived quality, you have to come with some quality information to support it, and then figure out another lever to pull, because it's never just one. All right, guys, hopefully you got value out of the content. If you did, share with somebody you know, hit the subscribe button below, turn on notifications, follow me on LinkedIn if you're not already following me. If you want to listen to all this stuff in a podcast form, every major podcast platform has industrial sales and marketing with me, and I'll see you on the next one.